Shalom Kulam, I remember Sabim Sheli. I have many fond memories of Sabim Sheli. Here are just a few. Although I personally do not remember it being less than 2 years old at the time, Saba was such a good storyteller, and he would recount the story with such vivid detail that I feel like it is a real memory. He would tell how I climbed into one of the kibbutz's trucks to play drive, a tiny kid grasping a huge steering wheel, and I locked myself in there. He said he motioned for me to unlock it. As he would tell this story, he would include the hand motions of lifting the lock and sound effects too, until I eventually followed his instructions. While not directly expressed below the laughter, the care and concern was apparent. One of my earliest memories of Hasabim. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and they came to visit us in our little farmhouse on the farm in Tennessee. I remember the excitement of seeing them for the first time at the ginormous airport. I remember the super huge suitcases that they opened up on the floor that seemed to contain an unlimited number of items, including gifts for us from Israel, with Shkadei Marak standing out as the most memorable, the little crunchy yellow squares salty against the tongue. A few years later, on a subsequent visit, Hasabim trusted me with their camera, and I became instantly enamored with snapping uneven, out-of-focus pictures of animals, people, and scenery. Given the cost of the equipment and the cost of developing film in those days, it is amazing that I was even allowed near that camera at all, let alone run around the countryside with it being only about 7 years old. Over the years, I remember Saba being both a serious and a humorous man. I recall him trying to inspire me to learn languages and travel. He would say that if you speak 2 languages, it's similar to being 2 different men, since you could speak to that many more people. He himself spoke about 7 languages, which I think is one of the reasons he was such a great intellectual and worldly man. He always had a lot of patience with me as he taught me Hebrew. Even my last visit to Israel while he was still with us, even though he was getting older, we would still sit side by side in chairs on the lawn near their house or in the kitchen. And he would help me read and try to translate words that I did not know. During these times, he would doze off in the chair while I was reading, but then jolt himself awake again to help me. And now Saba, being a humorous man, also in love telling jokes, probably as much as telling stories or teaching. One of his favorites that made fun of himself was that he would point to the front of his head and state, "A man who is bald here thinks." Then he would point to the back of his head and he would say, "A man who is bald here is smart." Then he would touch both places and say, "A man who is bald here and here thinks he is smart." Saba was a super caring, loving, patient, and smart man. Now that reminds me that I miss Savta Sheli too. She was always a stereotypical Jewish grandmother trying to feed us, so generous, asking uga o glida, ice cream or cake. I have never liked typical cakes as I find them dry and annoyingly crumbly to eat. But my favorite cake in the world, made by Savta herself, was moist and sweet and smooth and indescribably delicious. Taim meod. If you didn't have a chance to eat it then, you have missed out on a slice of heaven on earth. The number of times she bought me ice cream or encouraged me to eat from the carton ever present in her freezer are innumerable. I found Safta to be a simple, gentle woman who never became emotional nor angry in my presence, even during late stages of dementia, when that tends to be more common. I didn't bond with her as intellectually nor emotionally as I did with Saba, possibly due to language barriers, but we had uncountable hours of quiet companionship or attempts at communicating in my broken Hebrew and her English over the years during my infrequent but long visits to Israel. Some of those were spent watching the days of our lives, in the living room while Saba napped in a chair, or walking around the kibbutz and visiting the petting zoo. When I was 16, I often took Saba's bicycle and ramped off the 4 to 5 stairs near the dining hall. Once I ensured that Safta was nearby to witness it. Safta disapproved strongly, so I did it again for the disapproving look from her, just to feel that care. Besides her disapproving things that she felt were dangerous or not good, or feeding us her love, Safta had never told me she loved or cared about me. It may have been the language barrier, but I think it was more likely her cultural upbringing that restricted such expressions. However, during my last visit to see her alive, she told me in Hebrew that I'm handsome, that she liked my hair, and that she loved me and was proud of me. I am forever grateful that I had learned enough Hebrew by this point that I could actually understand these sentiments. I think the disease loosened up her restrictions some and allowed her to express these things. While I was not around to witness the worst of her deterioration at the end, I was happy that she never failed to recognize me and call me by my name, even over video call, something she somehow was able to do in their last days. Maybe because I am unique. I'm unique looking and have a unique name. Or that my look hasn't changed too dramatically over the years, despite the fact that she often confused others. One of the things we did on my last visit was go through all the photo albums under the TV. In these, she was excellent at recognizing who was who throughout the ages. Since picking them up on my last trip to Israel when Safta passed away, I have a small piece of Safta's jewelry. Plus, I have literally been walking in Saba's shoes for the last couple of years. I can't say that it helps me to know them much better, but it helps me remember them. One thing for sure, Saba had an eye for practical, durable, and I must even say, in my humble opinion, fashionable. These shoes must be over 40 years old now, made in Portugal, and after a refurbishing this year in Thailand, they are practically new. So in closing, I am happy that they were my Sabim, and that I had a chance to get to know them and have such good memories. Ha-Sabim were the only grandparents I ever had, and they mean a lot to me. I regret that I did not have more opportunities to be with them, to know and understand them more, and I am sad that they are gone. I hope and pray that they are in a better place in the spirit world, and that they continue to look after us with kindness, patience, and humor. I can picture Saba there now smiling and doing laps in the swimming pool. And Safta should be swimming next to Saba in heaven the same as she always did at Kibbutz Megiddo's pool. Ani ohev etchem.